The next episode of The Commercial Break starts now.
Mike Pesca from The Gist here now. Mike, thanks for joining us. We certainly appreciate it.
Mike.
Hello. It's my pleasure.
Live from the cat habitat in Brooklyn, New York, if I'm not mistaken.
Cat patat, correct.
The cat patat.
Yeah.
How are the cats?
They're good. They don't.
Are
have
they both
hair.
hairless or just one of them hairless?
No, Nokia and Matza are both hairless. They don't know that though, so don't tell them. They just
They
think
lick
they're
themselves
cats.
regardless?
You know who else is hairless? Who is a
Yes.
little sensitive about
Me
these
and
things.
you.
But but the amount, you know what? The receptivity to all the good lotions they've come out with. That's
Yeah.
pretty good. That's a pretty
Yeah.
big upside.
Wait,
Yeah.
the lotions that take away the hair?
No, I'm just saying that there are many products, there are many lotions for the bald head, and if I had hair
Yes.
there, I wouldn't appreciate them as much.
Yes.
There you go.
Your
I am-
emoluments, your rub-ins, etc.
I have a 38-minute routine after I get out of the shower. That does not include the hour and a half I spend in the shower. Notorious for long showers. That's why I got a water heater that's the size of one of my bedrooms. But at the same time, I love a good lotion. And I got to say,
doesn't?
I love a good lotion.
No,
I've just
yeah.
become this way in my old age.
And it's
There's-
good to put it on your heads because when it's on other parts of your bodies, slippage can result. But the head is usually up there alone navigating the world. Did you see the SNL song about the bald man?
Yes, I did.
I didn't understand their point. I mean, it's good to be seen, right?
Yes. Hey, it is good to be seen. Mike, you are a noted, I want to say, a pundit, an observationist. I mean, you are really good at what you do on The Gist because you are so damn intelligent. Are you part of Mensa?
It's funny because my wife and I just took IQ tests, and after me telling her that there are a lot of statistics that show the ideal IQ in a mate and leader is 120, so I thought she'd be about a 120. She tested higher than that, and then I tested lower. So
Oh, no.
I have a lot of excuses. A number of them, like I wasn't paying attention, but
Right.
I didn't mean it.
Yes.
You shouldn't get sarcastic on an IQ test. These are some of my excuses.
No.
I love it.
But I consider you a brilliant guy, one of the smarter guys that I've known in my life. And it would not be fair to the audience for me to let you start this conversation without sharing your thoughts on the recent election and why the Democrats lost and why Trump has won. Yet again, the Teflon Don avoids consequences of any actions, and he also gained followers. Gained popularity.
Yeah,
How did this happen?
Pick any ethnic group or any group at all in America
Yes.
that he was supposed to have offended, and
Yes.
he actually gained with all of them. Every single
Crazy.
one of them, right?
Yeah.
The only ones he didn't offend were college-educated whites. He didn't bother going against them. I guess he needed their money, and he did well with them.
Yeah.
So the election results was the word is overdetermined. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah. Explain.
Yeah, many different reasons.
Yes.
It's a
I agree with
horrible
you.
college-educated white term for many different reasons. And if you took out one of them, he probably still would have won. But I would say in order, number one, inflation. It's killed every incumbent party the world over. And no matter who the Democrats were running in this term, they probably would have lost. But who the Democrats were running was number two. And I don't think Kamala Harris was some sort of awful candidate.
No, I don't think so at all.
She only had 106 days. She wasn't running with her own people. And if there was a regular primary, and if she was awful, and that did happen once, I mean, I don't
did.
call her awful, but
Yeah.
she was unappealing, she wouldn't have been the candidate. So, there is a logic to having a primary and testing people and making sure they get their bad answers out of the way then.
Yeah.
So that was two. I think the third one is what the Democratic Party, the brand, what it means to people, and a lot of it's deserved. And I have an article in The Atlantic called The HRification of the Democratic Party. And you've worked in corporate jobs, you both have. And HR might be necessary, but it's definitely not beloved.
Yes.
And I just think the Democrats come across as the HR department,
Yeah.
with their initiatives and their supposed fun that is compelled and their bureaucracy and their form filling and their DEI and their not really being that essential to the mission. All that stuff, it's just like a bummer of an experience. And even if the non-reptilian parts of your brain are saying to yourself, well, we need HR, and aren't the Democrats kind of the adults in the room? It just doesn't feel good,
It doesn't. I think
True.
I agree with you here,
Yeah.
is that it feels a little nanny-ish, right? The whole situation, and then some parts of the Democratic Party, I think my father-in-law has this saying that extremes on both sides end up in the same place, right? And so I think that on the way opposite end, there's just like this very loud segment of the Democratic Party that rings that bell way too much, and it does feel a little nanny-ish, and it's like a buzz killer, right?
Yeah.
It's a fun sponge. It's taking all the fun out of what we're supposed to be doing, and I think that the people in the middle, who are me and you and Krissy and whoever else, I would like to think anyway, feel not attached to it as much as maybe we should, and the message gets lost a little bit.
Right, because what's one main job of the HR department? Compliance. They
Yes.
they'll admit that, and compliance isn't what we turn to politics for. It's not aspirational. And Donald Trump, for all his flaws, he's certainly not offering compliance, is he?
No.
Yeah.
And I think that the Democrats, and that extreme loud part of the party, they have big sway on Democrats who want to say normal things that would appeal to normal people, but they're a little afraid of what that part of the party will say. And recently we had a couple of representatives, of course, only after the election, saying, maybe we should have said something about, boys and girls teams and girls on boys teams. And the answer was, no, that's just bigotry. And even if you think it is bigotry, they couldn't even make a point other than it was bigotry. They ignored that really, really effective commercial that Donald Trump is for you and therefore they, them. And it was everywhere. And it wasn't the sort of thing you could put up on PolitiFact or Fact Check and say, oh, no, she never said that. Like, she did say that.
Yeah.
So I don't think, hey, I said overdetermined, right? And it's about
there's so many
inflation.
different reasons.
It's
I agree
definitely
with
not about the trans rights issue, but it is sort of what that symbolized in terms of Kamala Harris giving like a really bad, weird answer because she thought it was the spirit of the time, but also the inability of Democrats to be a little sensible about that and say, yeah, I heard that ad and I don't agree with it and I hear your concerns. They don't say that, because the HR department, essentially, that they are, tells them not to.
Yes. Well, and I, as Krissy and I were sharing a couple of days ago, the hard fact is it's really not overdetermined. More people showed up to vote for Trump than voted for Harris in the states where it mattered, and he gained amongst almost every swing state he gained, and less Democrats or less people who voted for Biden last time showed up at the ballot box. The excitement that we all thought was in the air was not really in the air, right?
Yeah.
How did pollsters get this so wrong?
Well, a couple points. I hated the joy part of the campaign. I just if the campaign is joyous, be joyous, but don't be explicitly joyous or meta joyous. It's like Kamala's coming to town. What's she selling? What programs? Joy. Like, that is not what I go to a Kamala Harris rally for or a concert for.
Yeah.
And then the Brat Summer thing, she didn't lose because of Brat Summer, but that lasted a little too long and no one understood it. And as soon as like Jake Tapper on CNN was making jokes about it, it was dead. And Jake's a cool guy for a 55-year-old newsman, but it ain't Brat. Whatever Brat
we
is.
said this when it was happening.
Yeah.
I was like, when the news guys are trying to explain Brat Summer, it's over. Like, it's done.
Like when Trump dances to YMCA in the worst form possible, somehow we put that in a part of our brain of beloved grandpa at a, well, maybe not beloved, but tolerated grandpa at a wedding. And when Kamala or the people around her think that Brat is the selling point, we just go, nah. Cringe. Yeah. So, wait, what was your original question?
The pollsters, how did they get it so wrong? They are essentially futurists, right?
Yeah.
And I don't believe anybody can see into the future. People have been trying to do this for, since the beginning of time. They've been trying to see into the future, and I can tell what's going on. But is it time to say that the polling, as it has been traditionally in the past, is just a dead version of trying to see the future?
I'm going to blow your mind, Brian.
Here it comes.
Blow that bald mind of yours. The mind's not. The mind's
Mind
great.
the glasses.
Head
Mind the
exploding.
lenses. Yeah.
The pollsters did really well.
You think so?
Yes. In the swing states, first of all, we all know about margin of error, and you can't really expect a poll to get it right within 1 point or 2 points. If you talk to 4,000 people and you could correctly figure out where, and you nail where 2,000 are going, but you don't nail where 1,770 are going, you didn't do a bad job. And that's essentially what the pollsters did. And if you look at the really close states, they were, I think they missed a little in Arizona, but they were within like 1.5 in Michigan and 1.5 in Wisconsin and a point or 2 points in Pennsylvania. They actually did really well in the margin of error. And Nate Silver, who I guess took some heat because he said it's very, very, very close, but he thought Kamala Harris, he didn't think his numbers showed Kamala Harris would win, although he wrote an article in the New York Times 2 weeks before saying, that's what the numbers say. My gut says Trump's going to win. He had, day before the election, a chart of all the likely outcomes, or all the possible outcomes in terms of the Electoral College.
Okay.
And if you look at his chart, the number one outcome that he predicted would happen, the most likely outcome, was Trump winning exactly 312 electoral votes. How many electoral votes did Trump win?
322,
Wow.
was it?
312.
312.
Wow.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I did watch
nailed
Nate
it
Silver.
exactly.
Yeah, I did watch Nate Silver, and I know that he came close. So I guess I want to maybe illuminate a different point. Why does everyone feel so let down? Everyone got so excited because the pollsters showed that, Kamala's on the upswing. The undecideds are swinging toward Kamala. It's going to be a close election, but I'd rather be Kamala than be Trump. And I guess if you're living in an echo chamber, then on the other side, they were saying the same thing about Trump.
Yeah.
But everybody that I have spoken with that I consider, relatively intelligent about this stuff and informed voters, fuck the polls. The polls were so wrong. He took all the swing states. But you make an interesting point, is that the margin of error is 3 points plus or minus. They got it right, 3 points plus or minus. They did.
Yeah.
And every swing state was within a point at the most of the last polls that came out were within a point.
Right.
Yeah. So what happens now? Does democracy...
Well, I'll tell you, let me tell you one more thing about that.
Please.
So odds, and maybe sports gambling or people in your audience do, and if there's a 50% free throw shooter, what are the chances he makes 7 free throws in a row? Or what's the chance there are 7 heads in a row?
Yeah.
And the answer is 1 out of 128, right? It's 1 over 2, 50% of the time, times 7.
Yep.
So you say, wait, so then they were wrong when they said 7 swing states were all a coin flip, and they got them all wrong, but states and elections don't work like coin flips.
Yep.
It's actually correlated. So if Pennsylvania goes one way, for the most part, Michigan's going to go that way, and Wisconsin's going to go that way. And the same is true with Georgia and North Carolina. They're going to go in unison. Arizona and Nevada are going to go in unison. And then they're all connected. So, if everyone's a little wrong in one direction, they're most likely going to be all wrong in one direction. And that's what happened. I think we kind of confused what coin flip meant 7 times versus the fact that it's an election. And we want to be, why are people who lost the election disappointed when they were told it was close? Obviously, they're going to be very disappointed because they had a lot invested in it. And then there is motivated reasoning for why you see a cloud and think it's a cowboy and not a spaceship, right?
Yeah, interesting.
And then there's the fact that a lot of the people in our media aren't like the media when we were kids, which really... Not that they don't care, but it was very incumbent upon them not to favor one side or the other. Most media consumption is by people who want an outcome, and they're not diverse in terms of which media you're looking at. So MSNBC knows that 90-something% of its viewers want Kamala to win. So when you have people who want to hear that, you're more incentivized. I'm not saying people were lying, but you're more incentivized to see the cloud as a cowboy.
Yes.
Or to only tell your audience things that will get them excited. Plus, there's the component of some of these outlets. I was listening to the Dan Bongino show. He's a conservative guy, former Secret Service agent. And the day of the election, his pitch was, we're going to win. I'm telling you we're going to win and then he would cite early voting, which actually did trend for Republicans, and we could have seen that if we looked at it. But he was saying, we need you to go out and vote. We need you to do this, because if you don't execute the plan, we're not going to win as much as we know we can. Now, MSNBC wouldn't be that explicit, but they're essentially trying to motivate their viewers to vote, because everyone at that network wants a win. And so we're not in a situation where people are just reporting the news really in an unbiased way. Yeah. Bias exists in human nature, right? But I think now more there is an audience incentive to not even examine the bias or to lean into the bias, because that's where you make your money. That's what the audience is telling you to do.
I agree with you. There's a bifurcated audience. We want that echo chamber. It makes us feel good. It warms us. It warms the cockles of our heart. It assures us that, Rachel Maddow is telling us all the good news out of the polls while the bad news is largely ignored. And so, and to some degree, we are getting what we asked for, right?
Yep.
They're just following the trends of living in echo chambers, all of us, in
or
these
maybe
siloed media
maybe
environments.
You listen to Pod Save America, right? Which is all a bunch of former Obama guys. And it's newsy. They're telling you nonfiction. But that's not a news show. It seems newsy. I'm not saying they're lying to you. They're not presenting as something else. But you're like, oh, I listen to a lot of news. I listen to Pod Save America. That's not news. Those are Democratic operatives trying to get a Democratic result, trying to give you good news, probably a little self-deluded themselves. And it's a lot different from the ideal of Walter Cronkite.
So let me ask you this. What happens now? Does the democracy crumble? Does democracy fail? Do we have another fair election? Do we have any elections whatsoever? Is the worst of liberals' fears and tears going to come true? Or is this just a lot of bluster to make us scared of the other side of the aisle? And the fact is democracy holds.
Yeah, I do think democracy holds. I do think it will be tested. And the clearest indication of this is it happened from 2017 through 2020, and it held. Now, I know all the arguments, there are no guardrails. Well, we've seen who Trump is picking, and there are some head scratchers, and there are some, I think, pleasant surprises with, say, Marco Rubio seems, of the people to be Secretary of State, seems like a fair enough pick for Donald Trump. So it is true that you could look at all societies and all of them, all the big ones from the Romans to the Ottomans have crumbled, but it's also not true that if you were living inside those societies, you'd get it right the moment that it does crumble.
Fair.
So I do think the thing that saved us first time around were competent people doing their jobs, competent people in the Justice Department and in the different agencies and in Homeland Security. And those people are still there. They're still dedicated to doing their jobs. They're still paid to do their jobs. They probably, a bunch of them, don't like Trump, so they're incentivized to do their jobs. He's not a guy with a ton of follow-up. Also, I don't think he's literally a Hitler figure. I don't think he's a murderous psychotic. I think he's someone who's very vain and very thin-skinned and likes to punish his enemies. But it'll just take so much work to effectively punish his enemies. So, for instance, I don't think Kamala Harris is going to be in an orange jumpsuit unless, that's her fashion choice that day. I don't think that some of the big name people that he threatened to prosecute, I don't think that'll happen. But on my show, I was talking to an expert who was saying what he can do is launch investigations, and the little guy, people we don't heard of, people who signed off on a document or was the special counsel Jack Smith's assistant. I don't know, maybe they did something wrong. Maybe they did nothing wrong, but they're going to have to spend a lot on lawyers to try to defend themselves. That's terrible. That's horrible. Does it affect your life? Unless it gets to the point of full-scale political prosecutions, no. The other thing he's going to do is I think he's definitely going to pardon some January 6th insurrectionists.
Oh, sure.
That's bad.
Yep.
What can you do? And then there's the question of deportations, and some will happen, and it's what's the scale? He says there's 20 million unlawful people unlawfully in America. That's probably too high. It's probably 12. If he went after even 3 or 4 million, it would
be a big deal.
It would be a big deal, but it would also really hurt the economy.
Yes.
He doesn't want to hurt the economy. He doesn't want to hurt stock markets. His stated tariff deal is never going to go in at that high price point because it would wreck the economy. This happened the first time. When he says something in a speech and people cheer, he'll keep saying it, but that's the sign that he doesn't usually believe it. I don't think he ever believed Mexico was going to pay for the wall. When he says something over and over, not in a speech, like his goal of deportation and his pardons, that's probably something he will do, but will probably survive it. I'm an optimist. As
far as deportations are concerned, I'm an optimist too. And a lot of the things that Trump said last time, and granted, he did. It's kind of like the gang that couldn't shoot straight, right? A lot of these things did not come true because democracy held or because Trump just kind of let it go. He just it fell apart. And as far as deportation is concerned, I read somewhere that it costs on average about $140,000 to $400,000 to deport one person from the United States of America and fly them back to their home country if the home country will take them at all. That is a massive amount of money if you're talking about even 2 million people.
Yeah.
Where does the money come
Yeah,
from? Where is the
right.
manpower? Where are the hours going to come from? And what ball are we dropping if we all start focusing on, our abuelita who's been here for 20 years not bothering anybody?
Yeah.
So that's that. And I have to, I have to think that at the end of the day, this is a lot like high school. For those who are, and what I mean by high school, the first day of high school is, it's never as good as you hoped it would be. It's never as bad as you feared it would be, right? It's somewhere in the middle. It ends up being just kind of a ho-hum day where maybe a few little exciting things happen.
Right.
And I think that's
and what we
what's gonna
forget
happen.
about it in retrospect were things like how much your sweater itched and how tired you were in the morning and these little
Yes.
indignities. And then you remember, I don't know, maybe if the prom was good or that one game where the football team, outkicked the competition. And so our memory, and this is probably why Trump won, right? Our memory of it was a little gauzy. Although I do have to say about that deportation number, I'm sure the Trump people would say, well, it's only that high because we haven't been doing it enough. If you do it at scale, we'll lower the number. Then again, if you deport the people on planes and they, buy that snack kit that's like $7.99, the number will even go up. We have to not let them do that. I'm a humanitarian, but we shouldn't allow them to buy the
no more
the
nuts and
charcuterie
pretzels.
board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No more charcuterie
Just the
board.
pretzels. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Not the
Well-
cheese plate. Come on, guys. We've got a country to run here.
We can't give champagne out on the deportation flight. Well, listen, you make me feel better because you are a pragmatist, Mike, if you're anything. And you make me feel a little bit better because I was saddened by the result. I can't say that I wasn't a little bit shocked, but I also probably had that delusional optimism that comes with any election that is close, as I did in 2016, as I did in 2020, and ended up on the side of the coin that I chose. But the reality, I think, is there's a lot of bluster going on right now, and I think at the end of the day, most of this bluster ends up just being a fart in the wind. And the other thing is that, Elon Musk is going to tear apart the country. No, he's not. Congress can only do that. And with a House that's going to be so close regardless, I don't think much of anything is going to get done, just like it hasn't gotten done in the last 8 years. I mean, I don't think
that's the
anything's
bad
going to
thing,
get done.
right? It's
That is
inaction,
the
not
bad
action.
thing. Is that there is no action.
There is a lot of, I understand, he's a weirdo, jumping around, billionaire, richest guy in the world, and quote-unquote bought the election. He spent $100 million on a get-out-the-vote effort that didn't really get out the vote. I mean, the vote got out by itself. But, Gates and Bloomberg, billionaires I like, they combined to spend $100 million. Kamala Harris had billionaires and millionaires funding this PAC called Future Forward that raised $700 million in tested ads. She had a lot more billionaire support, millionaire support. So if one of the things getting you down is like this election was bought and it was bought by the richest people in the world. Actually, the richest people in the world mostly threw away their money on their preferred candidate.
Yes, I agree with. I was texting with someone the other day, and they were pissing and moaning about Elon Musk bought the election and Elon Musk. And I said, let's not yell. Let he who cast the first stone not throw too many more, because the truth is, most billionaires, celebrities, corporate high flyers, they're mostly quietly moving toward Harris because that's the administration they prefer.
Yeah.
And Jeff Bezos, you have to say masterclass move. Not allowing the Washington Post to publish an editorial for whatever reason he had stated. But at the end of the day, he ended up on if you're Jeff Bezos, you don't want to be in the sights of Trump. It's just going to make for a miserable experience for the next 4 years. But our media is all bought and paid for anyway. So what does it really matter?
And also, I do see silver linings. Elon Musk understands that climate change is real, and if he has an important role in the administration, maybe he'll moderate Trump on that issue.
Yes.
Let's say America turns into the national equivalent of the Cybertruck in 4 years. Would that be so bad? I mean, it'd be a little ugly.
Well, they're
get
very
made fun
ugly,
of.
Mike. They're very terribly ugly.
They're a little cool. Like, if someone gifted you a Cybertruck, you'd say no?
No, I would say no. I don't like it. I honestly think it's one of the most distracting things. They're all over here in Atlanta.
Do you know this
We've got
Kia
like a million of them.
Is that it? Is that what it's called? The
Yeah,
Portage?
the
or the
Sportage. Yeah,
or
the Kia
something?
Sportage.
That's
yeah.
much worse. No one. Like, I think yeah.
But I'm not making a statement with my Kia Sportage. When I'm driving up at
You are unwittingly
fair
making a
enough.
statement. Yeah.
Well, they're built here in Georgia, so I'm just supporting the local econ. Or they're built actually right over the state line, but we say they're built in Georgia. Yeah, you make me feel a little bit better, Mike. I always enjoy talking to you about this. Okay, so Mike, you're not here to talk about the election. You just happen to have come at a very sensitive,
Opportune time.
at a very charged up time for us. But you really came to talk about your new series of interviews with comedians and comedians, which is just wonderful because you are a great conversationalist and you are doing a great job talking to these comedians in a way that I don't think we get a chance to dig in or would get a chance to dig in. It's just a very different room. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, it's called Funny You Should Mention. It's a limited series, and I think we're going to do another one because this one's been so successful. And my idea was comedians are pretty important people, pretty important thinkers. A lot of times they'll put their finger on something societally true and they'll convince everyone or in some way describe a phenomenon, and then that's the description that takes hold. There was the Saturday Night Live sketch with Tom Hanks about poor people and white people and them voting for Trump. That became one of those things that cut through because it was comedy and explained us to ourselves.
Yeah.
So comedians are, not to be too highfalutin, I don't think they like being called philosophers. They're kind of public intellectuals. They can be, right? Some of them just tell dick jokes. And what I say is God bless them. But some of them, Louis C.K. or Shane Gillis will want to essentially have a premise and comedically convince you of the premise. It's more interesting for them, and to fans of comedians like that, more interesting for us. Wanda Sykes does it. It's done on the left and the right. So I wanted to take these comedians who are essentially doing humorous op-eds and talk to them, as I do every day on my show, about just like the people who write actual op-eds, right? Why do you say this? How do you back this up? But I never lose sight of the real point with a comedian isn't to make a point. It's to be funny. So how do you say this in a way that maximizes being funny? How do you say this in a way that is true but not so true? Comedians hate clapter. So these are the discussions I've been having, and so far it's been really interesting to me, and the audience has responded well.
I am so interested in comedians and their effect on the world. It's part of the reason why we have interviewed so many of them here on the show. Their effect on the world, their ability to push the envelope, to invite new ideas into society or normalize through laughter ideas that otherwise were taboo or maybe frowned upon. I really think a good comedian, a good, as you said, op-ed comedian, right? If you want to say it like that, a good op-ed comedian's job, like a Chris Rock or whoever, is to push the envelope while you're at your most vulnerably emotionally open, and that is when you're laughing when you find something funny, or you agree with something and find it funny because you yourself are that idiot, right? You yourself have that opinion. You yourself are on the other side of the joke. And then it plants that seed. Maybe I'm wrong about this, or maybe I should change my mind, or he thinks it's cool, so now I think it's cool. And comedians often have just a wonderful vessel to bring those ideas into our head in a way that the news or pundits or commentarians cannot, because you're just in a different space. You're in a different energetic space. Yeah. And I like how you're getting to the bottom of that.
And this goes back to Plato, who we definitely don't talk about. But, he would point to the fact that he was pretty suspicious of humor because he thought it was, well, you're just sneaking in under the tent, making people laugh and filling them with bad ideas. But what a lot of these comedians think about is, why do we think this way? And then they, perhaps alone in our society, are allowed and incentivized to say the opposite of the group think, or to try to explore why we are saying things this way, and then to play around with a premise that might seem offensive. And one great thing that I talk to comedians, what they love is when they start off with the premise that we all agree on, and then they take the opposite side of the premise, and then they essentially convince people, you know what, maybe you're right. Like Sam J talking about why shouldn't blackface be acceptable, which is something that most of us would say, whoa, hey, but then Sam J, who is black, makes her point. Is she being absurd? Is she exaggerating? A little bit of both. But at the end, you're like, that is interesting. There is a contradiction there, And maybe it's just funny, but it is thoughtful. And so the thoughtful part, I'm really, really fascinated with.
And yeah, I think this is a good lane for you, Mike. I think you should continue to do this because it's a good intersection of. Well, here, let me back up for a second. I don't think most people go to a comedy show to be preached to, or to find a new idea, or to have their minds open in any spectrum. I don't think most people think on that level. Some do, but I think, and some understand who they're going to see. Right, when they go to see. I don't know, Shane Gillis, or when you go to see Sam Morrill, when you're walking in the door, there are going to be seeds planted. There are going to be ideas. They're really good at that. But I don't think most people think that. But you have there's an intersection there between intellectual and comedy that I find myself fascinated by. And you do a really good job of bringing that, at least in the ones that I've seen. You do a really good job of bringing that out in the communities. What is your favorite nugget of information, truth, surprise that you've received in these conversations?
Well, let's see. As I go through them, I suppose I had not so much a debate, but I did push back on Sam J. And what we got to was the prizing of lived experience, as they say. They used to just call it experience, but then they put a lived in front of it.
I wonder why.
Yeah, so much more important. And I am more.
It sounds snobby.
It is a little bit, right? And I'm a little more, I guess, data-driven and thinking, okay, but if that's just an anecdote, why would that, essentially apply to the entire population? But I did have my mind a little bit changed about the importance, especially what she's doing through art, of talking about, her lived experience and being essentially profiled by police when she was 9 years old and earlier. Yeah, so that was good. That changed me. Roy Wood and I had a similar conversation. Alex Edelman, which wasn't part of this series, but definitely part of what I do. That was a great conversation. That guy just won a Tony and an Oscar for his one-man show. Yeah. And so I just have pretty much enjoyed all of them. I've got something out of all of them, and they're all funny here or there. So, you might think, well, you do this a lot. Hey, come on, you don't have to be quote-unquote on. I used to think that was an inducement for a comedian to do the show, but 90% of them want to be on and want to be funny. Yeah. That's the mode they're most comfortable with.
We have found a couple things through our time with comedians. 99% of the interviews that we have done are comedians, and an actress or actor here or there. And now Mike Pesca from The Gist, which is certainly the most intellectual conversation ever had on the commercial break because of you, not because of us. But I do have to say that what we find is there's three types of personality types, or entertainment types that come on the show. Yeah. One of them is the comedian who is on from the moment that we say record, and we almost don't have to do anything. You drop a word and they go. And there's a few of them literally filled up the entire hour. We didn't have much to say.
Is that good? Do you like that?
It can be. It can be refreshing, especially if it's a personality that is larger than life and known for being that way. Right. Then you're reassured that they're just doing what they do. And that's fun to watch. It's fun to watch it unfold. Yeah. And, of course, there's always a little bit of interaction. You can almost tee it up. It's like, it's like putting a little gas in the tank and watching it go, right?
And it is also interesting because as interviewers, it's the only time that you're not asking someone about the thing. You're just saying do the thing. Or not even saying it.
You're just
you talk to a musician, they're probably not pulling an accordion out and singing to you. Or anyone who has an idea, they're not actually showing you their data or writing the idea, but the comedian is actually doing the thing.
That's it. You know Brad Williams? Do you know who Brad Williams is? Okay, so Brad came in. This is just a great example. Brad came in, so much to talk to him about, so many things I wanted to cover, and I said, I saw you were on a WWE cruise last week, like a cruise with WWE people, one of those cruises. And an hour later, he wrapped up the story. And I'm not kidding. The guy just went. He just, it's like you spun him and he went. It was crazy. There is a second type which don't come in on. They come in, I think they get disarmed by the fact that we are not going to tee up their jokes and just let them do their set, right? Yeah. Like they would on a late night show or some other podcast or whatever, just a conversation. Yeah. And that conversation is often light and silly and sometimes leads to funny things. And then there's a third type would just come in really difficult, I think is the best word to put it. They're difficult. They don't know why they're here. Their publicist has set it up. I'm not sure who I'm talking to or why I'm talking to them, and it shows. Now, that could just be a bad day, but I find that what you see a lot of times on stage or on a video or on a TikTok, you think of as a personality, like it's just them entertaining. But sometimes you get exactly what you see on that TikTok video or that show or HBO or whatever, and sometimes it's not for the good. It's not for the good when you're interviewing them. You're like, okay. You're smarmy and kind of snot little kid.
You must have had this experience though, and please name names, where they may come in like that, but you crack them. You ask the good question, or show their work, or in some way communicate to them, well, I don't know why I'm here, and I've never heard of this podcast because I don't have the ability to look at the top 20 podcasts in America.
Yeah.
Anyway, but then your skill, essentially, or whatever, the alchemy of the moment comes through, and they brighten up. And maybe for the audience, it's better to have Brad Williams just like, boom, right out of the gate. But for you, that must be very satisfying.
Yes, totally. And there have been a few. And Gina Gershon was one. Gina Gershon is an actress. She's not a comedian. But, you look at Gina Gershon on screen and you think sexy, sultry, smarmy, right? That's just the kind of the character that she plays. And she came on in the first few minutes, okay, whatever. But then she just turned on like a light, and it felt really good. Then there's others. And I'll give you names, but not here on the air. But there was one person in particular came in really kind of snarky, at first lovely, then turned really snarky for the rest of the interview.
But again, I think that was just his personality.
I think that was just his personality. What you saw was what you got,
yeah.
and it didn't matter who he was talking to. You weren't going to be the funnier one in the room, right? He was going to make sure that at all expense, and that's okay. Like,
there is that. There is that. Yes,
it's a little competitive.
Who the hell does this
almost.
guy think he is? Ooh, maybe that person had a podcast lower ranked than yours.
I think that might be the case. Actually.
It might be the case.
Yeah.
It might be the case.
And this guy's like, I'm playing ho-hos in Ho-Hocus. I'm busting my ass. And this bald MFer.
I think.
I'm on my 4th Netflix special, and I can't get higher ranked than the commercial break. But that's okay. We'll get it. I think you're doing a lovely job.
Congratulations.
How do people find us? Tell us all about the contact details. I tried to look you up on Instagram, and you are sparse, my friend. You as a person.
I'm not an Instagram.
I saw one
type.
picture. You have an account with one picture. I saw.
Was it
you
flattering?
looked handsome.
Did
you
it
had
take
hair.
My good side.
You had hair. Let's put it that way.
I had hair, wide lapels, and was holding, Nixon does it again headline.
Yeah.
So The Gist is the name of the show. It is actually the longest running news and opinion daily podcast
That's
show.
right. I forgot about that. You're right about that.
We give it over to Funny You Should Mention, which is our limited series every other week. And on the YouTube channel for The Gist is where you can see all the videos of all these interviews. So we try not to hide it behind too many places, and definitely not Instagram. We have taken a stance against Instagram.
Well, good for you.
But also Vine. So we were right about that one.
Vine.
Yeah.
Vine. I remember that.
Yeah, Vine
Didn't
went
Vine
away.
get bought by Instagram? Isn't that what became Reels?
I mean,
think.
Vine definitely, like TikTok is Vine, but
Yeah,
just
yeah.
maybe some more seconds aligned to it.
Wow, that TikTok has taken off. Thank God we only have 5 followers on it. But we don't post, to be honest.
You're
with
right.
you.
See,
It's a
your TikTok is my Vine, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
both agree that MySpace is the place to find
Right.
our show.
Always.
Mike, you've been a friend of the show for a long time. I really appreciate you coming on today. I would like to say to you that if you would periodically come back and make us feel better as we run
Yes,
into
please.
the next kind of unknown chapter in our United States history.
I'd love that.
I would love it too, actually. So let's put a pin in it, and you and I will communicate. I know we do. So Mike Pesca from The Gist, the longest running daily news podcast or daily
That's incredible.
commentary on current events podcast.
Hosted by a bald man who lives in Brooklyn.
But if you like what you heard here today, you get that unfiltered 5 days a week. I can't
You
believe
sense
you do
it
it
was
5 days a
filtered,
week.
Bryan, Krissy. Did you?
What's that?
Filter, the word that came to mind.
Mike, we love you. Check out his new comedy special on YouTube. We'll put links in the show notes. Thanks, and we will catch you on the flip side, Mike.
Thanks,
All right.
Mike.
Thank you guys so much.